Hello and welcome everybody. Good day to you all and a warm welcome to GHI's Asia webinar, the Asian Aviation Market Update. I hope you're all keeping well and thanks for joining us here this morning in Europe and in the evening in Asia. And I'm not even sure what time it is in the Americas, but thank you all for joining the session. A big thank you to the team at JBT Aerotech who have sponsored this webinar this morning. Thank you to Thomas, Jennifer and the team at JBT. Okay, well, cast your minds back to 28th of May 2020. We were deep in the initial onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. We were in lockdown, we were broadcasting from our bedrooms, and many of our panelists here this afternoon were helping us deliver the first GHI webinar of the pandemic, looking at the Asia market. There was so much uncertainty at that time, and I think we're all deeply surprised by just how long this crisis has lasted. And here we are, almost 2 years since that first webinar, and we're still in the grips of the COVID pandemic. We've all seen the spike in Omicron cases. I think there's a lot more optimism than there was at that point in May 2020. We are seeing travel, particularly across Europe and Americas, picking up in terms of volumes. And certainly from what I've been reading and hearing, we are very much at the point here in Europe where we think the pandemic may become an endemic and a much more manageable challenge. But in Asia, where we focus our attentions today, there is still, according to the latest IATA figures, a 90% or so reduction in international traffic compared to 2019. And I'll show you here, if I can bring your attention to the slides on the screen now, the comparison of the various international markets and the course of seat capacity in the 2022. Now, Asia is the yellow line, and there are 4 scenarios here, and these analysts love their scenarios. We've got a U-shaped recovery, we've got a V-shaped recovery, and I think new ones on me, we had an L-shaped, and even a Nike swoosh recovery. But in all 4, you can see just how challenging it is for this Asia Pacific market. It lags behind all of the other major global aviation sectors in the recovery path. And interested to talk to our panel today about how we manage that and whether that line is accurate and what we can do to increase the trajectory. Okay, some housekeeping announcements before we get underway. We have got 4 presentations coming up and an interview. And then we are going to move into an open floor Q&A, and we very much invite you to submit your questions. You can do that by hovering over the question, the bubbles icon, speech bubbles icon, sorry, at the bottom of your screen. If you click there, you can submit a question to our panel, and we actively encourage you to do that. The slides and the recording of today's sessions will be distributed to you by GHI after the webinar. So don't worry, you'll get to see everything and watch it at your leisure on demand. And we'll try to get that across to you as soon as possible. I'm going to try and keep us to time, which gives us 85 minutes left in the match. So I will crack on and introduce our panel. I'm delighted to be joined today by Brendan Sobey, who is independent analyst and consultant at Sobey Aviation. Welcome, Brendan. Welcome back.
Thanks, Max. It's great to be back again.
Good to have you. We've got Thomas Leipert, who is MD Asia Pacific Ground Support Equipment and Gate Equipment at JBT Aerotech. Welcome back, Thomas.
Thanks, Max. Thanks
for joining another original. We are delighted to have Vivian Lau, who is CEO of Jardine Airport Services Group. Hello, Vivian. Welcome.
Thank you, Max. Good day, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks. Good to see you. Look forward to your presentation. We have Javid. Welcome back, Javid. Javid Malik, who is Group Chief Operations Officer at AirAsia. Hello, Javid.
Hey, everyone. Great to be back.
And last but not least, delighted to welcome back Yaqub Paperdi, who is CEO Gateway Services at SATS in Singapore. Hello, Yaqub, and welcome.
Thank you, Max. Glad to be back.
Excellent. Okay, so let's get underway. And the first, we're going to begin with Brendan. And Brendan regularly produces analysis and forecasts on traffic and the aviation sector in Asia and beyond. And we're going to begin, Brendan, with myself asking you a few questions to give us a summary of how you see the market here in Asia developing in 2022. So I'm going to begin by asking you, what is your latest thinking, your latest assessment on the Asia market outlook, particularly with regards to international travel this year?
Yeah, so international travel had picked up the last couple of months of last year. You mentioned that 10% figure, which was roughly the figure in November. December figures are starting to trickle out as well, and they look a little bit better than November, despite the beginning of Omicron, but definitely were affected by the beginning of the Omicron crisis. And now what we're looking at right now in the first quarter is a very challenging situation because a lot of the reopenings have been rolled back. A lot of the restrictions on international travel have been reimposed. And, at best, we're looking at kind of a stalled situation compared to end of last year. So, that 10% figure, at least for international, is likely to continue. I should point out that 10% is kind of an average for Asia Pacific. Obviously, you have some markets that are doing better, some markets that are doing worse. Really ranges from from Hong Kong and mainland China, which is completely closed. Hong Kong probably in the worst performing market at this point, with closer to a 1% figure, and it ranges all the way up to almost a full recovery in international traffic in the Maldives, which is kind of an anomaly of a market, an exception market, where they've reopened already in 2020 and have performed exceptionally well. India doing a bit better than average. Singapore now doing a bit better than average as well, about 15%. So it's it is mixed, but 10% is the average, and I think we'll kind of be stalled at that rate for a while, and at least for the first quarter. And we're talking about the situation, like the forecast for the entire year. And one of the reasons why I'm kind of hesitant to give a presentation or graphs that you were kind of showing just now is that we just don't know. It's so hard to predict beyond a couple of months right now. All those curves are curves just kind of going up basically, in different with different degrees, obviously depending on who's predicting it. But the reality is that that's not how this works. It's as we've seen over and over again, there's setbacks and it goes up and down. So it's not going to be just a straight recovery of international traffic. It's going to be something that's uneven and very hard to predict. More than a couple of months in advance. But generally speaking, the outlook for this year is of course better than last year for international as well as for domestic, which we can talk about a little bit as well. Domestic was set back for a good part of the year last year in Asia Pacific, especially compared to the other regions, which had a better domestic recovery because vaccination rollout was slow here. Delta hit Asia Pacific hard. Second and third quarter last year was very bad for domestic, but that's starting to pick up as well. And for example, in December, we had both the Philippines and Malaysia for the first time were over 50% in terms of domestic, first time since COVID. And so 20 months, and they're finally the figure that was just came out this week was 57% for both Manila and Kuala Lumpur. So that's kind of the magic figure this week is 50%, 7% domestic recovery for those markets.
Thanks, Ben. What about China? I mean, such a big market, such a dominant market. What specifically do you see unfolding there?
So China is, has done, well, generally speaking, domestically, but it's had another setback, towards the end of last year, as China has, reacted, very, aggressively when there's cases, even a small number of cases, shutting down parts of the country and really curtailing travel. But China overall, when you look at a lot of figures and a lot of the charts and graphs you see often exclude China from Asia Pacific, which is the right thing to do because it has behaved differently from the beginning. China domestic, did very well for most of the crisis, and is the large, such a large market that it was accounting for at one point for more than half of the global traffic. So that continues to do well, but and I think even with Omicron and the situation right now, which sets back China domestic somewhat, I think overall it will still recover quite, continue to recover from an annual perspective at least, although we'll have some setbacks. But the problem with China is international, of course, given the zero COVID strategy. There's just no end in sight. No, just Hong Kong and China, Taiwan. There's no indication of when things will finally open again. People say at least a year, which seems reasonable at this point, unfortunately. And a lot of markets, a lot of other markets in Asia, like Southeast Asia, Korea, Japan, rely very heavily on China for their overall international market until there's more, more known about, when China will recover it, or when China will start to reopen, and then what it will look like when it starts to reopen. It's very hard to predict, just generally how international will do in Asia.
Mm-hmm. But when it does, it will obviously, like you said, have a significant effect on a lot of the other economies and countries in the region.
Yeah, well, potentially, because we again, travel patterns in China will change. When international resumes, outbound China is a massive and fast-growing market that was the main source market for most other Asian countries pre-pandemic. But the floodgates won't necessarily open at once when it resumes, first of all. So it could be many years before it recovers. But I suspect travel patterns in China will change. The destinations that were popular before the crisis won't necessarily be popular after the crisis. The whole group travel, which was counted for most of the travelers, particularly in like Southeast Asia and other parts of Asia, that it might tilt more towards individual travelers. So there's so many unknowns just with the China outbound market, which is just a massive driver of air transport markets throughout Asia Pacific.
Thanks, Brendan. Look, let me take you back. Back in May 2020, you spoke of that time 6 airlines that had filed for bankruptcy, and that was what, 3-4 months into the COVID pandemic. You summed it up at that webinar as gloomy, but not a case of mass bankruptcies. What's your assessment now? I mean, we didn't think in May 2020 we'd be talking about a near 2-year stretch for this pandemic. And what's the latest news on airlines and bankruptcies in the industry?
Yeah, so it has been a lot longer crisis and a lot harsher than we expected, but we still haven't had mass bankruptcies. So that prediction was true. At the time, a lot of people were predicting mass bankruptcies, which I never agreed with, because you can see how the industry was already rallying behind the airlines to avoid bankruptcies, because mass bankruptcies is a doomsday scenario that is in nobody's interest. And even if this pandemic, lasts another couple of years, I don't still think we'll see that scenario. We might see more bankruptcies, in certain markets, a few here and there, and that will still happen, but we won't have mass bankruptcies, because the industry, there's government support, but there's also something called industry support, which is very important. And a lot of that, particularly in this region, is leasing companies. Leasing companies are, renegotiating with airlines to defer payments, to stretch out payments, to give them payment holidays during the pandemic, in exchange for extended leases and that kind of thing. But all sorts of other suppliers as well. Leasing companies are the largest single one, but other suppliers as well have worked with them. Some of them, through bankruptcies and court restructurings, but most of them through out of court restructurings. So there's been restructurings out of bankruptcy court for the most part. And I think that will continue to happen. I mean, but the problem is every time there's a setback, like this most recent one, these companies, these airlines go back to everyone and ask for further extensions, further restructurings. So there's, and at some point, it becomes harder and harder, because other parts of the world, as are recovering, and some suppliers might not be able to themselves withstand the pressure for much longer, and they can also move aircraft or increase the reliance on other regions that are doing better. And airlines, liquidity situation, they've been able to raise capital so far, but at some point it becomes harder and harder to raise capital, because you've raised so much already that the debt is so high. So that's the worry, of course, is the longer this crisis continues and the more setbacks we have, the harder it will be to continue the scenario where we've avoided this bankruptcy and this real financial, the worst of the financial impact. But I think some of it could happen if we continue to have setbacks, but not in a massive way, just in a more selective way. So I don't want to get everybody panicking.
No. But what you're saying is, if it is a protracted period in 22 with Omicron, there is enough in reserve and enough of a shield to prevent more bankruptcies occurring this year.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's always saying, oh, we're optimistic for, in a couple months, we're going to be there, So during Delta, the Pacific carriers, Asia Pacific carriers, which are really set back because their domestic markets, for those that had domestic markets, evaporated. Then they were holding out to the end of the year, and that happened, but then they were hoping for a better first quarter. Now they're hoping for second quarter, April is going to be great again. but it keeps on not happening. So you know, when those projections are not reality or don't turn into reality, they have to go back and raise more money, go back to their suppliers and restructure, you know, renegotiate everything again. So far, it's been okay, but you know, it's getting scarier, you know, the longer this continues, obviously.
Of course. Brendan, fascinating insight. Thank you very much. If you have a question for Brendan from his comments there, then please drop them into the chat. And Brendan will be joining us on the panel discussion, and we'll have more of a conversation later. But thank you very much for now, Brendan. I am going to hand the floor over to Thomas Leipert at JBT Aerotech for our first presentation of this evening's webinar. Call it this evening. Thomas, hello.
Hello.
Excellent. It looks like we're working, so I'll hand over to you for your presentation.
Okay, thanks. Thank you all. I can see there is a lot of friends in the attendees list, so it's very good to see people are still joining this type of event. I hope it will be the last one, but we never know. But it is what it is. So I will go through a quick presentation about JBT and what we are doing during the pandemic and what is the future for us. So just a quick introduction about JBT Aerotech. So we are a US manufacturer of GSE equipment. So we are doing loaders, pushback tractors, de-icer, washer, and passenger boarding bridge. Maybe the name I still say that, but before JBT, the name was FMC. So sometimes FMC is more popular in some area than other. But basically, we have a huge range of equipment. What is very important to remember is like we have also all this equipment in electrical power. So easy to operate, easy to maintain with a great reliability. This is a bit of the mojo of JBT. Now, you know, cargo is still a very high activity. I'm sure we will hear the same from the other panelists, but you know, our machine, our loader was used during the pandemic, is still used now for transportation of the vaccines and also of the PPE. Now we still have a huge peak of activity for cargo, is mainly due to online shopping, okay, that is booming everywhere in the world, but also in Asia. So our machines are quite used already in the region. We also saw during this pandemic some new words like freighters. So it's like a passenger aircraft convert to freighters. So this something new can show for me. It can show the agility and the power of innovation of our customer to solve some issue and to use their asset to make more business. This was something new during the pandemic. But 2020 was the year where we discovered the COVID. 2021, we can say it's the year of the vaccine. 2022 is still a big question mark. Like Brandon was saying, no one knows really what will happen. Definitely Asia are a bit behind of Europe or US. But with the high vaccination rate, and we can see we're quite confident to see some recovery at least this year, like Europe did last year. But in this difficult situation, we always have to go back to our DNA, and our DNA at JBT is our values. Integrity, accountability, relentless improvement, and teamwork. This is what makes us strong and stronger during the pandemic. And you can see what is very, very important is customer first at the base of all this value. And to answer and to help our customer during the pandemic, we have to be a solution provider. The idea was always to help our customer to go through this crisis. It's easy to say, definitely, but it's something that we are trying by different ways. So one of them was to create new products, a new option available for our existing machine to help our customer to help them their operation, during this pandemic. The second one was also to protect their investment. You know, the GSC machine is a big asset for Groundhandler or for airport or airlines. So we wanted also to help them to protect their investment for the future. This is another topic that I'm sure we will talk during this session, is the retraining and reskilling of the operators and of the operators mainly. So this is also we bring some solution for our customer. And the last one is to be more flexible in terms of business offer. So just if we go on the first one, new products. So this is something maybe you may familiar. It's the cargo chute. And so this was for the Praetors. Okay, it's a cargo chute so that you can install on the passenger steps, on any passenger steps, and it helps the ground handler to unload faster, you know, the aircraft. Thanks to we received last year a GSC Innovation Awards, and today this solution has been used in Europe and in Middle East with Dinata and British Airways. The second one, and this is quite something that we are quite proud at JBT, we develop and design and engineer a new machine during the pandemic. This is the Falcon loader. It's a feeder cargo aircraft. This one up to 2.2 tons. And this is really we designed because there was a special need for containerized cargo for Cessna and ATR. You know, so this is mainly because of online shopping. People wants to have, you know, goods everywhere in the world, in a very small location. One of our customers, I'm sure you know, is FedEx for these products. The last one is JetDock. So JetDock is an option on our loader. That is, again, safety is very important for us, is to improve the safety of the operators and the aircraft on the ground. And basically, I always take this example, is like auto parking, like you can have on your car. So the operator will push a button, and the loader will approach in a safely manner the aircraft. So we don't need any outside target. Everything is made by camera. It's a very effective solution to improve the safety of the operators and the aircraft. So this was like in terms of new products. Sorry. Now when we say we want to protect your investments, is we develop a new offer. It's called the health check. Okay, a machine health check that we were sending our field service engineer. So we have field service engineer based in Singapore, Australia, and Hong Kong. And we were sending our guys on the ground to check every machine to our customer. So this will really help the customer during downtime to have a complete overview of the machine, and to be able, when the market restarts, you know, to have a machine in a perfect condition that there is with no major breakdown. The third point is the training. So training, reskilling. So this is something that we took into consideration during the pandemic. People have time, you know, because on the pandemic, but you still need to keep people busy or like train. So we have different options available. We have the online option, okay, with our GBT University and our virtual maintenance training. But we are doing now back in Europe, in the US, factory training, okay, and customer training. So this is very key in the future, because we can use to improve the knowledge of the operator, and to keep people motivated. Business flexibility. This is one of the new programs we launched also during the pandemic, because most of our customers, frankly speaking, doesn't have any money to spend in new machine. So what we were doing is to do like a kind of a rent to buy program. So you could rent a machine for 6 to 24 months. At the end of the 24 months, you can buy or not buy the machine. This is really helping the ground handler to face, you know, some peak of activity without, you know, having the need to spend, you know, a big amount of money. And the last one, I will just finish with this slide. It's, you know, EGAC is very important. This is a kind of, we can see this is a trend in the region, but worldwide, basically. At GBT, we have the possibility to convert, you know, existing machine, diesel machine, to electrical power. So this is something that we offer to our customer, because one of the major issues we will face this year is also its supply chain. Okay, we have a lot of issues with our supply chain. It's not GBT is worldwide. So this is something we can really provide an easy solution to get some EGAC on the ground. So we are working with few customers in the region to implement this type of conversion, and this is on site, so we can do that on site at your place, at the customer place. This is really help, you know, the customer to get EGAC as soon as possible. For me, I will. This is the end of my presentation, Max. I just want to say again, thank you to organize this webinar. I hope it will be the last one this time online. For information, we will be at the Singapore Air Show next month. So if you want to see me or to have like a face-to-face meeting, if you are in Singapore, feel free to come to our booth. If you want some invitation, drop me an email. We can always help you to get in. Thanks, Max. Thanks, everyone, to attending this show.
Thank you very much. And you can just see there over the past couple of years since we last spoke on this webinar, the amount of innovation that has come out of this crisis in terms of products and services. Necessity is the motherhood of invention and all that. So really interesting stuff. And we'll pick up on some of the comments on skills that you mentioned when we go to open floor. For now, I'm going to move it along to our next presentation, which is from Vivian Lau. If we can bring Vivian on screen, please. There we go. Excellent. It looks like the slides are loading up. Hi, Vivian.
Okay, so the slide is on, right? Okay, so thanks, Max. Good day, everyone. This is Vivian from Hong Kong. Yeah. So can you see?
We can see it, but I think we can get them into presentation mode if it's possible.
Okay, let me
seeing them.
Try again.
Let's try again.
Yeah. Can you? Let me try again.
Take two. Let's do it again. See if they come up inside full screen.
Is it okay? Can you see?
We're still getting a preview mode, but I mean.
Okay. Yes, I know.
We can
what? So now.
That's it. Brilliant. We're underway.
Okay, great. Okay, so thank you again. So let me have a quick introduction of myself first, because I think some of you will aware that I used to work in Hatto, and I just moved across to Jardine Airport Services Group a couple of months ago. So that said, it gives me an opportunity to look at the impact of COVID from a cargo side to a more comprehensive ground handler perspective. So today I would share some of my view here. So first of all, let me have a quick introduction of JASG. So JASG is a ground handling service provider operating under different entities and for different types of services. We have been operating in Hong Kong International Airport for over 75 years. And we also have a joint venture in China, Kunming, for more than 10 years. Basically, our core services include all the above the wing, those passenger baggage and services, and also below the wing, the RAM and the cargo services. Of course, we also provide the low control flight operation and all other associated services. I think some of you would also expect that as a ground handling during the COVID period, we also provide all sorts of ad hoc services on the ground in order to support airlines or affected passengers in the crisis time. And here is the list of the 45 airline customers that we serve in Hong Kong. And in Kunming in China, we are also signed up with 42 domestic and international carriers who are our prime customers. So in today's session, I will first give a quick overview on the Asia, and also I will share some of my thoughts on some key trends observed during the COVID crisis. So let me start with the IATA forecast. So in this chart, you can see that Asia looks by far the worst region in 2022. So within Asia traffic, it's forecast to be nearly 90% below 2019 level for the full year of 2020. This is actually echoing what Brendan has shared. IATA is also actually suggesting another year of weak passenger demand for Asian aviation and tourism. So for airlines operating in and out from the Asia Pacific region, that message is seriously concerning. If we look at Hong Kong, Cathay Pacific has been particularly hard hit due to the outbreak of Omicron. It has dramatically cut back its planned capacity in response to the latest crew quarantine requirement and the flight restriction imposed by the Hong Kong government. This graph shows the dive in seat numbers in early January has brought the capacity back to the level last seen in May last year. And it would be likely to go lower still. So Cathay forecasts that it will operate just 2% of its pre-pandemic passenger capacity and 20% of its cargo capacity in January 2022. In comparison, it operated 12% of pre-COVID passenger capacity and 71% of cargo capacity back in November last year. So you can see the huge impact there. So indeed, our hopes for a much brighter 2022 has taken an early hit because of the Omicron. So all the major markets are tightening the travel and restrictions, and in Asia in particular, you can see most of the border are back to closed. So having gone through 2 years of COVID crisis, there are a few key trends I would like to share today. So the first of all, as Thomas also mentioned, printer is a new name for aviation. So cargo has been a lifeline and a bright spot during pandemic. Many airline operators has modified their planes to transport cargo on passenger seats or even by removing the passenger seats. So air cargo's strong momentum is expected to continue at least through 2022. And until COVID restrictions end, there's no sign of this trend slowing down. In Hong Kong, we also see a strong demand of printers. As REM service provider, we observe all safety measures strictly. IATA issued a good reference for the guideline on the cabin loading, and there are also new operation procedures and new GSE guideline for printers as well. When handling converted passenger aircraft, it involves a lot of manual work, which is more time consuming and resource consuming compared to the handling of like freighters or belly cargo only. On average, it requires between 12 to 20 staff to load or offload the cabins. So there are also many variables attached to it, including the type of GSE being used. So this results in increasing ground times of the converted aircraft for the handling time. So hence, it is important for airlines to work closely with your ground operators and all the communication for all the requirements well in advance. That's critically important to make sure the printers are flying on schedule and also fulfilling all the requirements. Secondly, is the investment in the better travel experience is also another thing that's happening in the quiet passenger terminal. So in Hong Kong International Airport, a single token journey is now on track by creating an identification to match the passengers' biometrics and passport that allow them simply to scan their fingerprint or through the face recognition to pass through various checkpoints. So this will help travelers move across the various stages of airport clearance faster and increases the airport efficiency by reducing the queue lanes and also enhancing all the overall airport experience. So this definitely is investing for the better traveling experience and for the future after the crisis. However, despite all the investment on the digital process, as a ground handler, what we've identified and that require an urgent need of attention will be the passenger health certificate verifications. So during the COVID crisis, all of our ground staff are required to perform manual verifications of all various types of health certificate in paper form or scan format. So digital passenger health certificate will be an urgent requirement for airlines and airports to standardize approaches to verification in preparation for the post-crisis traffic rebound. So with all the automation in process, we do need to get rid of all those manual checking process for futures. Coming to the third one, to me, this is also the most important one. Skill retention remains a key challenge. Let's be honest, staff working in the aviation industry are encountering an unprecedented hardship amid the pandemic. Not to mention the perceived high risk of related to virus infection, most staff are also suffering job instability in the forms of reduced working hours, lower welfare benefits, changing work shift or positions, or increased possibility of layoffs. Due to the flight fluctuations resulting from the border restrictions, most airlines and ground operators have to scale staffing operation at very short notice. And more operators will continue to face this challenge in 2022. On the other hand, experienced staff are looking to move their careers to other sectors away from the airports, creating a challenge for the aviation community to prepare for flight resumptions. In my view, it's important that the government or airport authority to develop a coherent plan for crisis management amongst all stakeholders, to share the cost incurred from the anti-pandemic measures, and also to provide financial support to staff and also aviation operator until full recovery. The future of aviation industry will be shaped by our collective response for this crisis. To sum up, aviation is a very resilient industry, but the impact of the COVID pandemic is far from over. So we better learn the Greek alphabet well, because Omicron is not the last. It's going to keep happening. So let's prepare for it more sensibly. Thank you very much. So this is the end of my sharing. Thank you.
That was really interesting and insightful, Vivian. Thank you. I didn't do Greek at school, so I'm not sure what comes next. Hopefully I won't be finding out anytime soon, but thank you very much. And if you have questions for Vivian, then please drop them into the Q&A section, which I can see some of you already doing. Fantastic. We'll get to those after the final presentation from Yakub. Thanks for now, Vivian. We'll see you again shortly. And I will hand over to Javid Malik of Air Asia. Hello, Javid. Hopefully we'll get you on screen. Here we go. And here we go. We are underway with Javid, and we have a video from Javid, who's then going to join us on the panel. So I'll turn myself off and let's watch Javid's presentation.
Hi everyone, I'm Javid Malik and I'm the Group Chief Operating Officer for Air Asia. We're made up of 4 airlines from Indonesia, Philippines, Thailand and Malaysia. And pre-COVID, we were operating almost 1,600 flights a day. That's really busy. At the moment, we're only doing 450, but it's a great start to the recovery that we're all hoping for. My role here is to look after all of the operational frontline teams, looking at strategy, process, standardization, performance, and the digital journey, all about technology and how we improve our productivity and performance and enhance the customer experience. So I'm really pleased to be meeting all of you online, talking to you, and hopefully sharing a great day together. We're very confident about the restart. In fact, since October last year, 2021, we've seen strong seat factors, we've seen a lot of pent-up demand, and every day we're adding more aircraft to frequencies. What that's meant, though, is to really collaborate and partner with all of our regulators, our airport partners, our engineering partners who've been critical in getting our aircraft back to service and ready for everyday operation. Key to that has been talking to the governments, working with them, trying to improve the way that the PCR testing, just overall satisfaction and comfort of COVID flying comes together. What does that mean? Well, PCR tests were expensive, they took time, and we've been lobbying and working with governments hard to reduce the cost of testing and to improve the time it takes to get testing back. That's just some of the things that we've been doing to try to get confidence back in the air. On the aircraft, we've been cleaning our aircraft inside and out far greater than ever before. Our HEPA filters, of course, everybody's now famous with that name, HEPA. We're making the air cleaner and safer for you every day that you fly. And we make sure that our guests are informed about this as they get on board through announcements. We're making sure that we clean our aircraft between transit flights. And of course, at night when they come home to sleep, we make sure every one of those aircrafts are given that extra bit of care and love, so that in the morning they're ready for that first wave. All of that's been done on top of technology where we're trying to digitize and go contactless for the entire ground experience so that customers feel reassured, happy, safe, that their well-being is in safe hands when they're traveling with Air Asia. Our stakeholders have been really key in the way that we've had to collaborate in the last 2 years since COVID. One of the particular things has been talking to our partners, our suppliers, and all of our contract services and renegotiating new terms, renegotiating conditions, and also making sure that we can fulfill our payment obligations to them in a sustainable way. They've understood the conditions that we've all operated on, the seat factors that have dropped, the frequencies that have gone down. Our partners have been superb with us. Quite frankly, without them, we wouldn't be back here today. But to do that, we've had to build relationships over the last 20 years and ongoing so that they can see long-term sustainability. Relationships, partnerships, and understanding have been key to surviving through COVID. One of my favorite subjects, digitization in the operation, is been hectic. It's been fun, but it's also been very rewarding. You can see the shirt I'm wearing today, hopefully, and it says Faces. Our major program. This is about using biometrics to enable safe contactless travel through the entire passenger journey. We've built Faces, a biometric program that can be registered on your phone from the minute you buy a ticket to make the booking, checking in and traveling to the airport, all the way through to security and getting on board the aircraft. All only simply using your face, which is fantastic. Some of the other things that we're building, and please register today on airasia.com, our super app, and register your face, and then you can be part of that journey as well. We've also doing something called BIC, baggage information. And what that means is to basically take the image of the bag, use the image to help our baggage loaders find the bag in the event that we have to offload the bag and get the bag off quickly. That's going to save us anything between 8 to 10 minutes for every delay that we normally were getting because passengers had not arrived at the gate. So BIC is really important, baggage information capture. That's a new innovation that we've also done. We've removed our kiosks in terms of a touch environment, and we've moved them all to contactless. Simple scan of a QR code, and you can complete your check-in transaction or ask for a bag tag. That's also been added in. We were the first airline in April 2020 to introduce something called Scan to Fly. This was a character recognition program, OCR, which scanned PCR certificates, digitized them and put them into the check-in record, allowing us to authenticate travelers with documents that were paper written or handwritten. That allowed us to speed up the process and also make it contactless. So many such things that we've been continuously building and developing to improve the experience, reduce our operating costs, and make the contactless travel experience easy, safe, and healthy. One of the real opportunities, and I think the heroes of COVID event or COVID period, has been the logistics and supply chain businesses. And we were not going to sit back and wait in that scenario as well, or in that opportunity. We created our own new cargo company, our logistics company called Teleport, and boy, they've been so busy. They've been involved in shipping, of course, COVID vaccinations. They've been moving food. They've been moving all sorts of e-commerce and everything that we could do to try to keep the economies moving using our capacity of our scheduled aircraft. But also we took the opportunity, as we had lots of aircraft grounded, to convert some of those to freighters and cargo aircraft only. So we've been busy moving boxes and moving livestock and moving vaccines, as I said, many other things across the ASEAN region. And that's helped us offset some of our impact on when it comes to revenues, but it's also allowed us to grow the networks even more, keep our crew engaged in flying, keep our aircraft moving. Now, Teleport has grown from strength to strength in the last 2 years. They now do a home delivery, last mile delivery system, which allows us to bring products in on our planes, process it through our warehouse, and put it into the hands of couriers who can take it straight to the consumers or to the businesses, all the way in the AirAsia ecosystem, which is part of our AirAsia super app, part of our AirAsia digital ecosystem completely. Use Teleport today. You'll see the capacity there. Really happy to announce that we've got our first freighter. So you'll see this branded Teleport aircraft, and it's out there now between Thailand and some of the major cargo hubs of the world, shipping and moving cargo for us under the new brand Teleport. So 2021 clearly was full of challenges, but even in those challenges, our people that we call All Stars and our guests rose to the challenge of staying with us, working with us, and even working harder day by day. And we want to thank them all for that. And we want to thank our guests for trusting in the AirAsia brand and staying loyal to us, but also helping us through these tough times. We won many awards in that period of time, from Skytrax for our best low-cost cabin crew to the various on-time performance and net promoter scores. So everything was continued to improve, which is great news when we were struggling with the effects of the pandemic. But 2022 brings to us and greets us with optimism. We see the virus and the pandemic lighten in the sense that Omicron is here. It is highly more infectious, but it's not as vicious as some of the previous strains have been, and we hope that we can get through this very quickly. But we're also seeing confidence. People want to travel. They're desperate to get out and meet their families and loved ones. And for that, we've made sure that the fares are low, our network continues to be connected well, but we're flying where we can make sure we can sustain the routes profitably. We've got to make sure that we are a profitable organization, and we continue to contribute to this ASEAN region, which has more than 600 million guests as a potential. And we want to continue to be the biggest player in this region for many more years to come. We're continuously expanding our fleet, renewing our fleet with more efficient aircraft that will keep joining us over the next few years. And as we look at our cargo business, I mentioned earlier, Teleport, we're looking at more opportunities to make those operational turnarounds smarter, faster, safer, more capacity into the cargo routes as well. It's going to be a key part of our strategy going forward that's going to grow in momentum than just our passenger business. And above all, our AirAsia Digital, airasia.com super app platform is key to bringing this ecosystem that we've pivoted to in 2021 to create more digital businesses of value. Watch out for things like health. AirAsia Money is going to be a big fintech aspect for us as we grow to more markets for financial. But overall, our digital businesses are going to be something that you're going to love and want to use on top of flying with us. It truly is about making sure everyone can fly with us. answered all your questions. Hope you found them informative, and I really look forward to seeing you inside one of our aircraft at AirAsia.
Thank you very much to Javid for the presentation, and look forward to speaking to you a bit further on the discussion very shortly. I'm now going to hand it straight to Yakub Papurdi of SATS for our concluding presentation, and then we'll throw it open to the floor. Hello, Yakub.
Hi, Max.
Hello. Excellent. There you are. So hopefully, Kerry's loading.
Okay.
And here we go. Over to you, Yakub.
Hi, very good afternoon to everyone. I would just like to take this opportunity at the start of this presentation to say a big thank you to all our staff in SATS and across our network, but also to dedicate this word of thanks to all the staff of all ground handlers and cargo handlers who had to work extremely hard, surmounting one challenge after another over the last 2 years. It has been a difficult time for everyone, and I think it is remarkable that that the employees from one company to another has been able to adapt, has been able to overcome the many challenges that they face. So I just would like to say that at the start, because it is deserving of the efforts that they put in. Of all the, can you go to the next slide, please? Yeah, of all the services that we provide, I think cargo has proven to be the most resilient. It picked up quite rapidly, and today it is at the pre-COVID level already. And I'm quite pleased that in SATS, in the case of Coolport, for much of the last 1 year or so, we have been very busy in not only in distributing locally, but in also redistributing vaccines throughout Asia. And that has been one of the more pleasing tasks that we undertook as we distributed vaccines to many locations in the Asia Pacific. Flights has also gone up compared to the pre-COVID level, but passenger volumes remain low because of the border closures. Next, please. During this COVID period, while loads have come down, but complexities have increased. In the passenger terminals, there is considerable zonal segregation that has had to be introduced so that the handling of transfer passengers can become safer and more reassuring to the traveling public. There is a gamut of documentation checks, both in the departure check-in areas as well as in transit areas. But this is something that needed to be done in order to meet the regulations of the destinations that are served. Cargo handling has been described earlier. Sharp increase in cargo in cabin and freighter flights that accounted for the cargo volumes to reach the pre-COVID level. Next, please. I think of all the challenges that we face, the manpower challenges have become the most obvious, most pressing. Because of the significant drop in volume, we've had to reduce our staff strength quite considerably in financial year 2021. We have also had to reduce outsourcing as well as the use of part-time and flexi-time work. However, the reintroduction of passenger flights, in particular, the introduction of the vaccinated travel lanes and the operation of cargo flights have necessitated a higher headcount over the last 6 months. However, we are also reliant on foreign labor and the border closures have made rehiring challenging, and also in the case of a few countries quite difficult. But it is an effort that we continue to give our utmost attention so that we will be able to match manpower strength with flight volumes. Next slide, please. So what did we do over the last 2 years? It is always an opportunity. A crisis also presents opportunities. And next slide, please. And a number of things we introduced in order to keep the community safe. Besides the use of PPE, one of the biggest asset, as Javed also mentioned, was contactless check-in kiosks and backdrop machines that made check-in more comfortable and more, as I mentioned earlier, more reassuring to the traveling public. The use of HEPA filters, facial and iris recognition, replacing fingerprint scanning, and then and also to ensure the safety of all our frontline employees. We are at about 100% of fully vaccinated, as well as reaching 100% for the booster shots as well. These are things that were done quite systematically, not only by us as a company, but by all the companies operating the airport as an ecosystem. And one of the remarkable things that I think that I have had the pleasure to see was that this pandemic has brought the ecosystem closer. Every one of us in the ecosystem now work more tightly and more purposefully, discussing every week what we need to do in order to make handling better, safer, adding capacity, adding infrastructure, adding headcount, so that as flights are mounted, we would be better prepared. And that's something that is taken on as a group approach. And that's something I would really recommend that every airport does, because it does contribute a lot to implementation of the recovery processes. Next slide, please. We invested a lot in our people. We were quite fortunate that the government provided a lot of reliefs and grants. And during the course of a year, we were able to hold about 77,000 classroom training days to keep our people busy, but also to equip them with knowledge and to multi-skill them, so that when flights rebound, they will be able to support productively and also in different capacities, so that we will become as an organization more resilient compared to the pre-COVID period. So we also took the opportunity to offer training to airlines, cargo agents, and several other organizations in the aviation sector in Singapore. So that occupied a lot of our time, and we were fortunate that our human capital colleagues spent a lot of time and effort to make this available to everyone in the organization and others outside the organization as well. Next slide, please. Digitalization is fundamental. I think we use the downtime to accelerate automation and digitalization effort. This is just an example of the things that we did. We worked on and we cut over a new cargo management system. We call it COSYS Plus. We introduced a digital station management that would make our transfer processes in particular more robust, and to be able to cut ground time for our customers. We introduced a new manpower deployment module. We call it Project Mosaic, and also use that module to link up our disparate systems across the group, so that each would be able to interact with one another more purposefully. In line with that, we introduced a new app. We call it a ground commander app. So the red cap, so to speak, that are deployed in every area of the handling will be able to enhance the focus on safety. In connection with that, we worked on a project to geofencing of the parking bay, so that ground support equipment that enter the parking bay would be better tracked and will be better managed from a safety perspective. As well as RFID processes and infrastructure to support the handling of dangerous goods. We introduced an e-read bag module for freighter handling, as well as introduce new facilities and digitalizing them for the handling of vaccine and other perishables and food items in our full port facility. So all these were worked on over the last couple of years, well, 2 years to be exact, during the COVID period. So that, and most of these have been cut over, so we will be well placed to ride the wave of growth when growth comes, hopefully sooner rather than later. Next slide, please. Well, what do we anticipate 2022 will be like? Next slide. I think the IATA forecast is that it will go back to the pre-COVID level by 2024. But there's been a lot of one curveball after another. The Omicron variant is another. And hopefully it is not as severe as the Delta variant. But we are readying ourselves to see the pre-COVID volumes return more aggressively this year and in 2023. And we think we are quite optimistic that the flight volumes will come back more strongly this year compared to last year, and will probably go back to where we were at the pre-COVID level towards the end of this financial year and next year as well, largely using the IATA forecast as well as using the growth volumes that we have seen across the region and elsewhere in the Middle East, Europe, and in America. Next slide. But air cargo, as Javed has also described, continues to be the jewel of the operation. We were happy that we were able to contribute not only to vaccine handling, but in also ensuring food security during the peak of the pandemic, bringing in food and widening the distribution of food imports and re-exports through the Singapore hub, so that the supply chain remains resilient and not disrupted by the impact of the pandemic. Next slide. So what are the key takeaways for the rest of the year? I think we need to watch the Omicron variant. Many things are being put in place so that we can manage our operations better, more safely. Business continuity plans remain central into how we design our processes and rosters and deployments. We are seeing reopening of borders and more travel lanes opening up. This is the positive part that we have experienced over the last few months. But I think what has not happened, and we think is likely to take place this year or next, is the restart of leisure travel via the low-cost carriers. Quite a lot of the vaccinated travel lanes have involved either medium-haul or long-haul routes But I think the leisure travel is one that is greater comfort among the traveling public, and we are so dependent, for example, on the Chinese market and so on. And when this comes back and rebounds, then I think we can also see the LCC market grow more strongly, and the flight volumes then will take on a more exponential growth. And in that respect, getting our manpower ready in terms of numbers, in terms of renewal of skill sets, licenses, and so on, will remain critical if we are able to support the growth and the restart of flight volumes. So this is the new reality in the pandemic or in the endemic era. All the precautionary measures and processes that we are putting in place, which unfortunately comes at higher cost, but is more reassuring to travelers. But it is a new reality nonetheless that we need to take on board as we also engage internally as well with our customers and other stakeholders on how we can make our business more productive and also more viable going forward. The next peak that we are expecting will be at the end of the month, the Chinese New Year, the Year of the Tiger. So while I take this opportunity to wish all my Chinese colleagues a Happy New Year, and we also like to see the tiger roar and bring in much excitement to the landscape, excitement that we have not seen in terms of volumes over the last 2 years. So hopefully when this picks up, it will be good news for everybody all around. So that ends my short presentation and sharing with all of you. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Yaqub. Interesting stuff. And we will now commence the panel discussion. So if I can invite our panelists, remaining panelists, to come back on screen. Before we get to your questions, I want to start by involving the audience. We're going to ask you to vote in some live poll questions, if we can load them up any second. So any moment now, we'll put on the screen. Here we go. 3 questions. So we'd like to vote on these as stakeholders. So question 1, do you expect a significant relaxation in border restrictions in Asia and a subsequent growth in PAX volumes this year in 2022? If you can vote on that one, follow your way down the list. And then when do you expect passenger volumes in Asia to recover to 2019 levels? And you've got multiple options there. And finally, if you can tell us your thoughts on the adaptations you'd most like to see from GSE suppliers, given your current challenges in operations in the region. So we will leave you to submit your votes on those, and we'll load up the results a little bit later. I'm going to go straight to your questions and get the panel to respond on some of these. So hello, Bob Rogers, hope you're doing well. Bob asks, given that Asia Pacific and China are the largest market for Boeing and Airbus, how do you think they will come out of this? Brendan, can I come to you first?
Okay. I mean, that's a big question. I think over the long term, Asia will be the engine of growth and will be accounting for the bulk of orders and deliveries. But what we're seeing right now is the other regions, because they've recovered faster, the percentage of deliveries going to this region has reduced, but which makes sense. We also see excess aircraft from this region be moved over to other regions. But this, I think, is temporary. You know, eventually the orders, the deliveries will resume at the pre-COVID rates in Asia Pacific, and so far the order books have mainly remained intact. Most, you know, orders, a lot of the orders globally come from Asia. A lot of the largest orders are actually from this region, Southeast Asia, like the likes of AirAsia and Lion, Vietjet. Some of the largest orders among all airlines globally, and these orders are still intact. The deliveries have just been kind of pushed out by a few years, or in some cases several years. So you know, it's like we were saying, the airlines also have survived. They, you know, we haven't seen mass bankruptcies or mass casualties in terms of airlines. So So it's still there and it will be there. It just you know, pushed out, delayed, and more long term, I would say.
Thank you, Brendan. Any other comments on that one from other panelists? I'll move on. Okay, let me move on. We had a question for Javed. Unfortunately, we've lost Javed to another meeting. We'll pass that one on from Milan. Thanks for your question. There, John. Hello, John from Damarel, who asks, and this one is directed, I'll direct this one to you, Koob. John asks, the wider aviation industry has pulled together well during the pandemic, and there's been strong support from financial institutions for debt restructuring, etc., and other issues. Do you feel you've had full support from governments to help you through the crisis? Beginning with you, Yakub.
Yeah, thanks, Max. No, I must say that I must comment insofar as Singapore is concerned. We've had 4 fiscal budgets approved by Parliament in Singapore to support businesses affected by the pandemic, and the aviation business obviously is one of the worst hit businesses during the pandemic, and we've had tremendous help financially from the government across all the companies. We've had budgets approved called the resilience budget and so on. You know, there were 4 budgets and going into billions of dollars, and we were able to retain our Singapore employees throughout the 2 years, and we used that reliefs and grants, as I mentioned earlier, to reskill and to multi-skill these employees during that time. So in that respect, I think we've had a fantastic support from the government over the course of 4 budgets and dispensed to the aviation companies. Thank you.
Thanks, Yakub. Another comment. Brendan, do you want to comment on that? Do you think the level of support has been sufficient?
Yeah. I mean, it varies really, of course, by country. So, I mean, Singapore is the gold standard in terms of support, and it continues and in so many ways, and it goes very wide. You know, so countries, some countries have been more selective in their support. You know, not supporting all types of companies or even all airlines. You know, only helping you know, government carriers in some cases, which creates an unlevel playing field. But generally speaking, the support you know, has been sufficient in Singapore and some other markets. But like I was saying initially, there's been a lot of support from the industry, you know, from creditors and so forth, as well, particularly in those cases where the government support has been non-existent or not to kind of the Singapore gold standard.
Thanks, Brendan. Really interesting throughout your presentations, this issue around reskilling came up universally. And can you tell us a little bit more about how you're going to tackle that challenge? I mean, Vivian, I'll begin with you. You spoke about this this huge challenge around a loss of skilled expertise, tacit knowledge that's going to leave the industry. We know passenger volumes are suppressed right now, but we see this pick up. We're going to need people back there turning the aircraft, boarding those passengers. How do you go about preparing to bring those people back when this whole pandemic has been so damaging for aviation's reputation?
Yeah, I think the real challenge is we don't know when the flight will resume. So that's the big unknown. We are actually seeing our staff leaving, which for us, we try to retain, but if we don't have a sufficient, you know, flight volume to support their living, then and also honestly, there's other sectors that are doing quite well. So that's why some staff actually can find a better job or higher pay in other sectors. And also knowing, you know, the airport is always considered as far away, you know, the traveling time and also the cost is a bit higher, and together with this risk that I mentioned in the presentation. And so that's really a real threat that we are seeing. I mean, not only in my company, but I am sharing this point of view from the Hong Kong airport community as well. So that's a real threat. But I know that this is also the issues across to different countries. And when flight rebound, and there are labor shortage, and also even we have the and staff on on the job. There could be a sick leave rate, high sick leave rate, or there's a various staff issue that may affect us on providing a quality service. So for us, what we are now trying to do is at least we maintain the existing pool. That's our prime and top priority, keeping the existing pool and doing all the staff welfare and also staff retention initiatives, and to keep them in the job first. And on the other hand, we are also doing a lot of cross training, same as in what your group shared. Honestly, in the past 2 years, a lot of staff are now multitask. In the past, they may be divided into individual teams, but now they can leverage on each other's. So there are certain tasks that they can really share the burden. So now, even though we are having a limited pool of labor, but actually the capability are much broader, because we are also taking advantage of the quiet time for cross-training. But on the other hand, attracting the new joiner to the aviation sector is still a long-term, struggle. I still remember in those good old days, we are talking about, labor shortage in aviation. But now when we are in the downtown, we are also talking about the labor shortage. So that's really the real issue, how we can make this industry more sexier to attract more people to come. So, but I think technology, the autonomous or all those in technology that are injecting in the aviation sector, that may also change the working environment, minimizing the manual work, and that may be more appealing to the younger generation to join.
It's a big challenge. Thank you, Vivian. Yaku, can I come to you on that issue around reskilling? And you spoke about the amount of training hours you put in with your teams. How are you preparing to match the labour demand with the pickup in passenger volumes, and is there available resource to do it?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, because there will be a lack. We are reliant on local as well as foreign content of labour. While we've been able to multi-skill all our foreign work content, but we also need to see borders reopen and to be able to bring back foreign workers that we were dependent on prior to COVID. But there will be a lack, and that's the reason why we have focused on multi-skilling, so that we can become more productive and we'll be able to manage the lack more purposefully as we ramp up our resources from the non-local sources. So it's about managing that lack better. It's about being able to match the volume increases in a calibrated way. So that's how we have been focusing and multi-skilling our workforce, so that they'll be ready when the time comes, and to be able to manage the lack in a manner that is suitable for everyone.
Yes, and universal global challenges. We're talking about this issue at our Americas conference coming up in Miami. So everyone is facing this pinch point around bringing staff back, and then, as you say, Vivian, the attractiveness as aviation as a whole, as an industry, as a job, and there's no doubt it had that curb appeal in the past, and we just need to restore it. Anyway, a potential solution, and it comes in our next question from Gert van Brempt-Nalian. Hello, Gert, who asks, how do you think digitalisation can help with the recovery? Or to rephrase that question, is COVID an opportunity for airports, ground handlers and forwarders to embrace more digitalisation? Thomas, I'll come to you on this one. The opportunities for digitalisation and automation in our market to help some of these challenges we're seeing.
Yeah, definitely. Digitalization is key, for ground handler and for airports. So on the GSC point of view, what we are doing, we have a dedicated system called IOPS that we can integrate to all kind of machines, GSC, but also get equipment to give to the airport authorities or to the ground handler best view, of their activity, and to the usage of their machine, and to have also it can be used also for kind of a preventive maintenance program. So this kind of this is what Javed was saying. Digitization is quite key for the industry. It is also a way to attract, because it's linked also what the previous subject to attract talent. Okay, in our industry, and I think we need to go to the GSC 2.0. We are trying to do that to be more, attractive for our customers, but also for the young talent to join the industry. And digitalization is part of that.
Okay, we did see Javed and Yaqub, you showed examples of this with the faces and the facial recognition boarding software. I'd be interested to know if you've got the statistics, how much quicker how much that's speeded up some of the check-in times and the boarding times by going paperless. I don't know if any of you would have those stats to hand, but it would seem that look at a camera, on you go, must significantly boost the throughput. I didn't prep you for that one, so I don't know if anyone's got any statistics. Yaqub, I don't know if you've got anything anecdotally about how much that improves the passenger journey and the speed at which you can pass people through security.
No, I think to be able to manage the operations through digital means is essential. I just want to share to answer your question, not so much with statistics, but we just went through a December peak travel, and every destination has got a tremendous amount of COVID-related documentation and documents to check and so on. So imagine, how does a check-in agent can they possibly remember all of this? And then as passengers come to the check-in counter, but we were absolutely fortunate that we had these automated check-in counters and kiosks, and passengers were able to utilize this mobile kiosk, and these COVID-related requirements were built into it, and they were able to check in, have the boarding passes printed, do the self-bag drop, and only if there are issues, then they go to the check-in counter, which were relatively few compared to the vast majority who were able to get the transactions done. And that kind of what we all saw ourselves is a big example, significant example of how digitalization helps our employees serve our customers better. And I think that's the way to go going forward.
Thanks, Yaqub. I'm going to move it along. So we've got some questions here and time is against us. So Dino Liu asks, compared to Europe and the US, Asia seems to adopt a stricter border control, which is sadly dragging the recovery in this region. What can we in the industry do or need to do to facilitate a quicker border relaxation? Any thoughts? Brendan, I'll come to you on that one. Is there anything we can do to help the government? I know this is happening and it's going on in the background.
This is the big question that everybody wants an answer to. There's the lack of consensus between governments in Asia. This is a global issue, but it's particularly an issue in Asia. If you look just at ASEAN, the 10 countries here, there's a complete lack of consensus on protocols and relaxation measures. But there is initiatives underway to address this. It's just they're very slow moving, and all I can say is that the industry, all the associations, all the individual stakeholders and players have to continue pushing this, and the travelers as well, because there is the demand to travel, but all these restrictions and stress, inconvenience that's being created by the strict border controls and the kind of knee-jerk reactions that we've seen over and over again when new things crop up. We just have to continue to push. And I think governments, hopefully, as we get through this year and we kind of learn from this latest Omicron situation and what's happened, with some of the reactions that will prove to be over the top, I think we'll start to see improvements there. I think the governments will start to have more bandwidth too to start addressing this, because so far during this crisis, a lot of the governments in Asia have just been so focused on domestic issues and their own kind of thing, very unilateral. I think eventually they'll start to have the bandwidth to address this, but it's going to take a long time. So I'm kind of cautiously optimistic that it will be resolved, but not overnight. And you know, it will be a gradual thing as we get into the second half of this year. I think we'll start to see more improvements in this area.
Thank you, Brendan. Right, we're going to move along. So we've got just coming up to 12:30. I'm going to run into a little bit of injury time, try and wrap everything up for about 7-8 minutes time. So I know people have got busy schedules. So this is from Abbas Ismail and course chair, who asks, in Singapore, we are fortunate with government support. Hotels are able to open up with local staycations and quarantine facilities. However, due to tight manpower markets, the service level has been affected even in 5-star hotels. My question is, we are able to prepare ourselves better in getting the right manpower and ensuring quality service levels to meet expected traffic growth, especially when we have more VTL flights. So I guess this comes back, Vivian, come to you on the ability to, in advance, cater to the demand that you see, rather than be caught off guard with a sudden surge in arrivals and not having your passenger check-in agents ready in sufficient supply. So
yes,
predictive demand.
Yeah, true. I think one thing is about getting enough labor, but echoing to what we just discussed about the digital process and also the automation, I think the other normality that are arising is, you know, all those ad hoc checking on the vaccine certificate and also all those health declaration forms. So all these are creating something extra. I would classify that as a non-standardized process. If everything goes very smooth, everything is standardized, we are fine. I think we have a level of confidence on scheduling our resources and then predicting and the demand and then also planning for resources. But it's all those ad hoc, unpredictable, you know, workload that doesn't help us in planning. So I think in the flight resumption, we also need, you know, as an industry working with airlines, ground handler, as all the stakeholder, we really want to standardize everything. Don't deviate too much from the standard. Otherwise, it doesn't help anyone.
Thank you, Vivian. Right, it's a question. It's from Reverend Alexander Yeboah. Hello, Reverend. We haven't seen you. I don't think I've seen you since we did our African conference in Rwanda. So I hope you're keeping well. And Alexander's looking for some encouragement and hope in this question. He asks, how are we as stakeholders to be sure that a new variant will not emerge to distort the hopes we have for the aviation industry, bouncing back to pre-19 levels? We here in West Africa are sceptical for the future. Can someone assure our ground handlers in West Africa that there will be light at the end of the tunnel? Can we give some hope, please, panel? Vivian, you scared me of talk of going further down the Greek alphabet to Sigma or whatever's next. So
we need to prepare.
Alexander some hope?
Yeah, we need to prepare, but I also believe that the pandemic will go one day, eventually. And also there's a Chinese saying, and all the thing will not last more than 3 years, if you believe the Chinese saying. So, and so I think, and there must be light out of the tunnel. And therefore, I think for me, yes, managing the crisis is and the top thing in my key agenda. But on the other hand, I think the flight resumption, how we are preparing for recovery, is really the next key agenda on our table.
Anyone else got some words of hope, Thomas? You?
Oh yeah, don't have any crystal ball, so unfortunately I don't. But we can only be positive. You know what is happening in US, what is happening in Europe with the Omicron variant. We may imagine that the variant is not too bad, and so we may see some kind of a recovery this year. But it's very difficult to say, and to project ourselves, in the next 3 months, So it's day by day, and it is what it is. So it's very difficult to predict something.
Thank you. I'm glad you mentioned crystal balls, Thomas, because just to wrap up, I am going to ask you to reach for those crystal balls that have all confounded us over the past couple of years, because they always seem to be wrong. But I would like to ask you all to give us your educated guess on where you think passenger volumes will finish this year of 2022 in Asia. And we know that we're coming into this year with international passenger volumes around about 10% of 2019 levels. Where do you think they will get to by the close of 2022. Crystal balls at the ready. Brendan, what's your crystal ball saying? And you know, give us some rationale around your.
I think the peak, recovery rate that we're likely to see is for international would be probably about 50% this year, and for domestic, 100% or greater in most domestic markets in Asia Pacific. But the caveat is the peak recovery rate. You cannot put a 1 point at a time, end of the year, because that assumes that the recovery rate will continue to increase in that straight line that so many of these curves show that I don't believe is ever going to happen. Like I was saying, earlier on in our conversation, that peak might be in July, it might be in October, who knows? It's because it goes up and down. But I believe that's roughly where we're going to get, as an Asia Pacific region. And again, another caveat would be is that some markets will be less than others. So 50% average doesn't mean that every country will be 50%. Some will be more, some will be lower, as we're already seeing now with the 10% average.
Thank you for that one. Brendan, Vivian, what do you think?
I think you throw up the toughest question in the sessions. Yes, but I think if I look at it from Hong Kong perspective, it's even more challenging to make a guess because we don't even open our border yet. So I think, and also in Brendan's session, he mentioned about the travel behavior, China-Hong Kong is quite different as well. So I think I really need to wait until the border between Hong Kong and China open first, then we can make a better guess on that.
And I should say that all the figures I always provide and always talk about are Asia excluding China. So
okay, put an asterisk on that one. Thomas, finally, what's your crystal ball saying?
Oh yeah, I think Brendan is quite right. Like reaching 50% by the end of the year for international flight is quite realistic. But again, I think the positive point is like there is a big demand for people to travel. You can see here in Singapore with the VTL. So people want, to go back on the plane, to travel the world and to discover new places. So this is what is quite reassuring because there is a demand for the airlines, to have more aircraft. Now is more the question, like we discussed before. It's like how to make this type of trip easy as before, because today there is a lot of constraint. A lot of paperwork. Even Singapore is doing a great job with the kiosk and the online concierge to book your PCR test and everything is quite smooth, very well. But it's still very difficult for people to travel, to go to country because the rules are changing all the time. You're not fully aware about what is, if there is new quarantine or if there is the restaurant are open, the hotel are open or not. So this is I think we get there, but yeah, 50% international flight for next year, like Brendan said, like up and down. It can be more in some country and less in some other one. But I think it's quite a reasonable guess, let's say.
Thank you, Thomas. Let's quickly load up what the audience crystal balls were saying, and we asked them, did they expect to see a significant relaxation in border restrictions this year and passenger volumes going up? So, optimism reigns, almost 60% thought there would be. Generally, as we saw in those IATA figures, the smart money is on 2024, when we're going to see volumes in the region get back to pre-pandemic levels. And we've got some even spread there on what we think the adaptation people will most like to see is on GSE equipment. You'll be very interested in those, Thomas. And it looks like electric variants are in demand at the moment. So thank you all very much for your participation today. Thank you to our panel giving up your time. If we didn't get to your question, I know there are a few for Javid, and we will pass those on to Javid, and any we didn't get to, we will forward onto the panel and we'll come back to you with responses. A big thank you to all of you out there who've logged in and supported the webinar. We are very grateful for your time and support. Just to wrap up from me to say that we are determined to bring the Asian market together in person, but given the current uncertainty that we've all touched on here, the best option for us to do that GHI is going to be to hold that event in the Middle East in early 2023, and we will be bringing you dates and locations very soon, but we will be getting everyone here back together in person in early 23, and very much looking forward to it. In the meantime, we have our Americas conference coming up at the end of March in Miami, 29th to the 31st of March, and we invite all of you to join us, and let's get back and see one another in person again. Looking forward to doing that. Thank you all very much. Finally, the presentations will be sent on along with a recording of the webinar. Take care. Hopefully we're not going beyond Omicron, and that is it for this pandemic, and we're going endemic very soon, but do take care, look after yourselves. Thanks once again to our panelists, and we'll see you all very soon. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks guys.
Take
care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks,
Bye.
Max.